Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 185. Now, we are joined by a very, very special guest today it's actually his fourth visit to the podcast. I'll tell you about him in a minute, and I will recap the previous episodes he's been on, just in case you haven't listened to them and want to go back to listen to them as well. I'm sure you will after listening to this one. He's a fantastic guy, and he also has the dubious pleasure of being both Pete and myself's coach as well. So we'll introduce him in a minute. I'm sure many of you know who he is. But first of all, we'll just catch up with Pete and see how you're doing. How are you today, Pete?
Lucky man, eh? Lucky man. No, yeah, I'm great. I had a great weekend last weekend. We've just been talking about like lifts and strength and stuff like that before we got recording. I was at the it's called At the Gym, like Gym Revolution in Nailsea, just up the road from me. It's like an hour up the road from me. And Gary was competing there. They were having like a powerlifting competition. So there was lots of able-bodied and disabled there as well. And yeah, it was just great. So Gary Clark, who's been on, benched 100 kilos, and then he had a nightmare on the deadlift. But a guy called Matt Chandler, Panda Chandler, got an unofficial record. I think they've got it on video and stuff. But he got an unofficial record of a seated raw deadlift, so no straps or anything, of 400 kilos. So he was sitting there. He was looking at the bar, and he's like, "Are we going to be able to get enough weight on that bar? You know, that's a problem these guys are having." I think Martin Tai did a 210 kilo bench press as well, and he's in a wheelchair, so he can't use his legs, no leg drive and all that. It's honestly, it was amazing. And then there was lots of like able-bodied guys pulling, 250 kilo deadlifts and all of this sort of stuff. It was just brilliant. It was so good. Huge place as well.
No, that sounds absolutely incredible. And we will just give a quick, we mentioned it before we came on, didn't we? We'll give a quick shout out. We'll kind of mention it most weeks as we lead up. But this year, Pete and I will both be assisting on the loading crew at the it's Britain's, isn't it?
Britain's Disabled Strongman, yeah.
Britain Disabled Strongman and Strongwoman, which is in September this year. It's the 14th and 15th of September, and it's at Brunel University in London. And I think it's either going to be, it's usually free to go and watch, or it'll be low cost anyway. It'll either be free or low cost in September. Judges will be Magnus for Magnusson over from Iceland. Matt Diamond from Wales will be there. So that'll be a great event. So we'll probably have Gary on again, won't we, leading up to the event to talk about it.
Yeah, he'll not let us not have him on. He'll be all over it.
Okay. And while we're talking about strength and strong powerlifting and just getting strong, I'll introduce our guest today. Our guest today is, like I said, for the fourth time, Mr. Paul Mcllroy. How are you doing, Paul?
Not too bad. Not too bad. How's it going, James?
Very, very well. Very, very well. And we've got, but just quickly to recap, Paul, as this is his fourth visit, if you do listen, I'd listen to this one first. Usually I say go back and listen to the other ones, but listen to this one because we're going to be talking about some very specific stuff today that's kind of time sensitive. And then if you want to go back and listen to some other podcasts that Paul has done with us, I mean, this is episode 185. You've got to go all the way back to episode 22 for Unleashing the Superhuman in You, which was the first time Paul joined us. And that would have been before Paul was my coach. And then we did a double episode 53 and 54, called The Mechanics of Strength, part 1 and part 2, episode 53 and 54 of the podcast. So go back and listen to that. But yeah, Paul is joining us from Belfast in Northern Ireland. And we're going to talk about a fantastic kind of loads of stuff we're going to talk about, but specifically as well, he's got a pair of weekends coming up, face-to-face live in-person workshops, one that he's doing over in Ireland in Belfast that both Pete and I are already paid and signed up for, and we're sharing a room, very cozy. It's going to be like was it Morecambe and Wise? We're going to be sharing. We're staying in a hotel right to the gym.
There's precedent for that as well, because we did that in Chard as well, didn't we, last year?
We did. There was a photo as well, wasn't there? Yeah,
it's all right. It works.
So he's going to do a weekend. They're doing a weekend in Belfast, which we talk about it more, but it's the 6th and the 7th of April. and then a weekend in the US in Charleston on the 15th and 16th of June. And I'm sure when we put this podcast out, there'll be links and things to sign up and for more information for those events. But anyway, Paul, so it's been a long time because this is episode 185. Obviously, Pete and I kind of interact with you on a weekly basis, but it's been, how many episodes is that? About 130 episodes ago. So that's kind of like 2 years ago, probably, or more, since you've been.
Yeah.
What's going on? You're coming back into the face-to-face and doing some coaching with people in a group setting. I mean, what prompted that, and what's the, what are you going to be teaching everyone, including us?
Yeah, well, as you know, for the past, God, well over a decade now, I've been primarily occupied with the Amazing 12, which is a body transformation that brings about its, what would you call it, pretty shocking change that occurs over a 12-week period via performance enhancement within the loading parameters that are conducive to muscular growth, and also along with a diet that's conducive to muscular growth and fat loss, and a cardiovascular conditioning program that's conducive to improvements in aerobic and anaerobic conditioning and fat loss. So it's about the Amazing 12 is something that became a global phenomenon for me about 10 years ago. It's not far off 20 years now that I've been involved in the program, but I've been doing the one thing for a long time, and it became very successful. And my own creative flame, so to speak, has been almost universally tied to that one thing for such a long period of time, almost a victim of its own success, if that makes, or, at least in my sense. And, I just got a real urge. Certain material was just in my head to come out. And these past couple of years now, some other things that will maybe even be more prevalent next year, but there's been a lot of creative things that I've been doing behind the scenes, and these workshop weekends is one of them. It's been busting to get out of me for such a long time, and for my own self personally, it's just nice to do something a bit different. The A12 has reached the stage now where it's such a large entity, and it's in over 180 locations around the world. We're over 15,000 transformations deep, and we have a staff that are very competent, and it doesn't need my constant supervision over all areas at once at all times as it maybe once did. And to be honest with you, it probably hasn't done for longer than I still was hanging on, if that makes any sense. I was probably ready to do this sooner than I did, but it's happened, and it's about time that I've stretched my programmatic wings a bit, so to speak, and started to do other things and put other content out there. And I'm really looking forward to this, because it's particularly day one is a subject matter that's very, very close to me personally, and something that has been really a lifelong passion of mine, which is such an odd thing to be so eternally focused on, but it's essentially optimizing one's ability to press the heaviest kettlebell possible overhead without leg drive in strict fashion. Yeah, it's been something that's been an obsession of mine for not far off 30 years. It didn't start off a kettlebell, but it was always overhead pressing strength, and it remains overhead pressing strength, particularly with one arm. And there is a reason for that, but it's an odd one. Maybe we'll talk about it later.
So yes, so I mean, the day one, I think, is called Mastering the Kettlebell Press.
Yes.
And but I would imagine, maybe rightly or wrongly, because I know how specific strength is and how specifically you get that neuromuscular kind of efficiency and strength and everything and technique. But will the Mastering the Kettlebell Press, although it's specifically based upon that and aimed at that, will that have carry over into other overhead pressing strength as well?
Well, absolutely. That's a really good point. And the answer is yes. I mean, let's put it this way. The rising tide raises all ships. As long as those ships are similar enough to each other, they will go up and down, in accordance to how close they are. And, really and truly, excuse me, the kettlebell is a great tool with which to improve all forms of overhead press, because of its morphology. Its morphology allows you to do things technically that allow you to do things programmatically, which you can't do with a barbell and a dumbbell. Techniques around managing fatigue in the middle of a set, which then cross over to how heavy of a kettlebell you can program, and how much volume you can program with a higher than normal percentage of 1 rep max, goes up relative to kettlebell, or goes up with a kettlebell when you use a kettlebell relative to what you can do with a barbell or a dumbbell or a log, or even calisthenic body weight like inverted press type stuff like handstand push-ups, simply because you're not really able to configure those implements in such a way that provide you interset rest and structural support in the same way, in the multiple ways actually that you can do that with a kettlebell, especially a single bell. There's so many different ways you can utilize different rack positions for different outcomes. Like, people think there's a hard style rack and there's a GS rack, and those people are right, but there are many subtle shades of gray and transitional points between those that neither do, that are actually essential if you want to optimize a press as opposed to a jerk, or this and that. And the kettlebell is the only implement that you can really do this with. And when you're able to do that, you're essentially, it allows you to do more with more. It allows you to work at a higher percentage of your 1 rep maximum for a higher given volume on any given set, and also enhances your recovery time in between sets and total workout volume in a session, in a week, in a month, total tonnage. And all of this adds up to a bigger end result. And at the end of the day, whether it's one arm, two arms, I was going to say no arms, but that would be impossible.
I know a lady who can do, well, she hasn't got no arms, but she's got, like, she was on the podcast. She was doing bench press with basically a barbell balancing on, like,
that's
on a
insane.
It's
that's incredible. It's just so incredible. I'm brave. So it's going to cross over to every kind of overhead press, and I have direct experience with this, as for the past 30 years or so. It's been overhead strength has been probably my main obsession. And I've developed a high level of ability in overhead pressing of every kind, and inverted pressing of every kind, and done the same thing for other athletes numerous times. So I can say with conviction that this form of kettlebell pressing is probably one of the best tides with which to raise all ships.
Fantastic. And because I was talking to one of my a coach who works out of my facility, who's like a freelance kind of a coach, the other day, and he heard me talking to someone, and I was talking about going over to Belfast for the weekend, and after he said, "Oh, what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, day one is the kettlebell press, and day two we'll come to later. We'll talk about that later in the podcast." But I said day one, and he kind of said, because I'm obviously with you programming for me, they see me pressing like all the time. I'm like pressing in the gym, and they say, "But surely you must, you know what you're doing with that now, don't you? Or you must, And people kind of have this. I suppose it's the mindset of going on a course or learning something once, and then thinking that you've got it, or that you know it, or that there's not more to learn. And like Pete and I know, and like Paul yourself, there's always more to learn, isn't there? And there's always nuances and tweaks and subtleties that can make a big difference for, I presume, the guys who are going to come on the weekend, but then also that they can then take away. I presume that the majority of people who are coming on the weekend will be coaches themselves, although not necessarily all of them, but and then that you can take away, and then you can help your people with, and your clients and your members and that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, it on the surface of something, it's a very simple exercise, isn't it? But like you say, there's so many nuances and differences to it. That you can spend more than a whole day, but we're going to spend a whole day sort of deep diving into it. Yeah.
You could spend 30 years on it, couldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You've both touched on the very thing that makes this both uniquely strange from the outside looking in, and then also blatantly obvious once you actually peel back the surface. It's like it's actually hard to squeeze 30 years into a day. On one hand, it's one exercise, right? So it's all about perspective. And most people are going to take the perspective that you described originally there, James. But I know that that both of you realize that the second perspective is the one to take, because it's the reason why you're coming all the way over from England, even though you've been both training with me online for an extended period of time and been benefiting directly from my coaching on this exercise, among many others. So, because there's limits to that, right? You two are going to be among the most developed technically when you get there, but you're both going to go away for both the same and different reasons, more technically developed than what you arrived, right? And that alone will take your already developed game to a much higher level. You know, this I can guarantee, because there's optimal coaching is always a relative terminology, and online optimal is different than in-person optimal, right? So you could be a coach that, maybe you can coach someone better online than this guy over here could coach them in person, but you will always be able to coach them in person better than you could online, right? It's just the way it is. You can program optimally online as long as there's video footage, particularly of the last set of every exercise, so that you can more accurately judge the RPE and thus the next dynamic numeric progression with which to implement. But technically, it's hard, because unless I have a camera on you from every angle, or I'm asking you to do every set from 3 different angles and different proximities of zoom, and and then I have to send back about 40 different voicemails to explain that, no, actually this is how this should feel. If I was right in front of you in person, I can literally, with your permission, get my hands, put them on your arm and go, wee. And say, and this should feel like X. And can you see when I point here, what does that feel like? Well, it should feel like this. And in minutes, you're better. In minutes, you're better. No matter how good you are, in minutes, you're better, right? So that's the advantage of face-to-face. And it's something that people haven't had an opportunity to do with me personally in almost a decade. And it's exciting to do it again in person. It's phenomenal, the results I've been able to get online with yourselves and other people. It's been very enjoyable, and I'm continuing to do that, and I will continue to do that. But it's going to be nice to sink my teeth into this personally, because one of the bigs, there's a lot, almost everyone going to this is already quite proficient in the kettlebell press. Almost everyone, to some degree. You've got guys who are highly developed hardstyle. You've got a couple of GS related guys. You've got kind of hybrid type athletes that I've been training myself, which I would consider you two guys kind of a hybrid GS hardstyle pressers, at least. And you've got guys who aren't that familiar with it in general, who maybe don't come from either background. It's probably maybe 80 or 90% fitness professionals, but there's some fitness enthusiasts in there who just enjoy strength and getting strong and want to get better. So it's a wide range, but almost everyone is already adequate, right? See, it depends what barometer you're looking at something through, like in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and there's black belts and there's black belts. So those are two different expressions that both apply to the same sort of principles. The black belt is the highest it goes, simply because nobody decided to make another color, right? Or shade in that case, right? It is an arbitrary cutoff point that humans like to put on things, but the reality is that evolution doesn't stop. both in terms of skill, in terms of levels of every kind, in terms of our very being and what we are. So yes, I understand the reason for those categorizations, but then you must understand that there are subtle shades of gray beyond that black. And every stripe that gets out of that, the belt's not long enough for the amount of stripes that would need to be added for most people. And it would go on forever and have no cutoff point if there wasn't like blacks where it stops, right? But I mean, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if you're a white belt, a blue belt seems like a god initially. I mean, that's just a fact. You're like, you strange physical wizard. What are you? It's like, work your physical magic and destroy me. And then purple belts almost seem like they're from another dimension. And and a black belt of any kind is almost unfathomable. And when you're rolling with them and you're literally putty in their hands, it's like, oh no, what are you? Will I ever be you? But realize that that individual among black belts is going to sit on a continuum somewhere, right? And, at the very, very top is people who are winning like world titles in the open at black belt, maybe at heavyweight, your Gordon Ryans, or your no holds barred world champion black belts who are doing it at the highest level in MMA and Vale Tudo, like a Hickson Gracie back in the day, or even a Damian Maya, people like that who are just pressure tested to the max at the highest level. So there are black belts and there are black belts, right? So there are a lot of pressing black belts coming to this, of which I would consider you two both. And you have a couple of stripes on your belt as well, you guys, right? But there's black belts and there's black belts. And we live in a world of specialization. And although I'm a strength generalist, if there's been one thing that I have been hyper obsessed with for the past 30 years, it's been the ability to press overhead. And it stems right back to the first time I actually ever touched a barbell. It was a clean and strict press. And I discovered that I had an ability to press decently well. I had been already doing like body weight type, already resistance training probably for about 5 years. So it wasn't a complete beginner, never touched a weight before, but I've never really touched a barbell. I've been doing boxing for 5 years and I'd been doing body weight stuff, push-ups, handstand push-ups, pull-ups, leg raises, all those types of things, hitting punch bags, maybe even very light weights in circuit training, but nothing officially like strength training orientated. And I decided it was time when I was 17 to get a barbell set. And it was a 110-pound or 50-kilo York barbell set. Of course it was, right? And I was 17, but I was like an astonishingly late developer, like almost comically, like we were getting worried, and I was 110 pounds at 17, right? And so 50 kilos body weight. Actually, the weight division I fought in was 51, and I walked around under the weight. Right. So when I went to get this barbell set out of a shop that sold such things, I brought my big brother with me because I wasn't confident enough that I could carry the thing to the bus stop. Right. And sure enough, my lack of confidence in myself was founded because he handed me the thing just to see out of comic value, and I was falling all over the place trying to stabilize this weight, and I almost fell backwards because the back end of it was too far back, and he caught me, and and he was like, he was like 26, and he was like right, okay, get him away, and just picked it up and sat it on his shoulder like it was nothing, and walked to the bus stop. He said, "You need this." I says, "Well, we're buying this. You clearly need this." Right?
Was this Paul? Was this the York ones that were the gold vinyl ones, or did you have the cast iron ones?
Well, I got the gold vinyl ones for as well. I got them first, actually.
Yeah.
And used them for circuits, but it was so light that I immediately got the cast iron ones. So it was like literally within a month or two of each other type of thing.
Because I remember, like, I think they used to have like an 11-kilo gold vinyl one, and it was about the size of a proper Olympic plate, wasn't it?
Yeah,
huge,
it was filled with cement. Yeah, I still got them.
Yeah,
I still got them in my home gym. I don't use them for anything, the gold vinyl ones, but I just leave them there sitting to remind myself of the process. So we're talking about the mid sort of 90s here. And I'm still obviously living in my mum's house. And we come home, we get the weight set out. I rip it out of the cardboard box. My brother goes into the living room to watch something on TV, and he's crouched on the floor as he normally was at the time watching TV. And I'm in the kitchen. And I was like, right, what do you do with these? Right, okay. So I've seen a few things, I've read some magazines, I know what the crack is. I'm going to try military press or lift. I'm going to lift it over my head. So I put the smallest amount of weight on, and I lift it once, and I put a little bit more on. It's essentially a muscle clean and then a strict press every time. And I'm just adding until it's like, right, shit, there's no more. Right. So I've added them all. Right. So now there's 110 pounds on it. About 3 sets prior, my brother stopped watching the TV and started watching me.
Yeah.
Right. And now he was taking notice. And when I had everything on it, he says, is that everything on that bar? Is that all on there? And I was like, yeah. He says, you've no chance. Like that. He knows my mentality. And I was like, right, we'll see who's got no chance. And I muscle cleaned it and strictly pressed it over my head. Okay.
So this was about body weight at the time.
It was 100% body weight.
Yeah,
pretty
and
much.
this was the first time you tried it. So I mean, that's
Yes. However, there was a period of like body weight, and later weight circuit stuff. So it's not like I was completely untrained, but yeah, I'd never done that exercise before, and I've never used a barbell. And at that moment, it was like a sort of like a prophetic moment. Literally from that day onwards, I was like, that's the same as me. That weighs as much as I do. I'm going to press 100% body weight overhead with one arm one day. I said it to him. He looked at me like I was insane. You know, my elder brother. And from that day to this, it's still been my life's goal to press 100% body weight overhead without leg drive. Unfortunately, I can press 110 pounds for maybe 15 reps without leg drive with one arm. But I no longer weigh 110 pounds. It's more like 210 pounds these days. But it's still on the agenda. The mission 100% is about, it's going to be a combination of me coming down a bit and me getting a bit stronger and getting a bit lighter and meeting in the middle type of thing. And that's the goal. That's the goal, to do that. So believe me when I say there's no stone left unturned. This has been a 30-year journey, of which I'm more than qualified to the belt's black enough at this moment in time.
Yeah.
You know, to pass this on. And you know, my experiences with the kettlebell as well has been for the past 20 years. From the very, very, right at the very, very sort of inception of hardstyle, I learned from the masters like Pavel Satsalin face to face, and I learned from the masters like Russian world champions and world champion coaches face to face in GS, and competed at the highest levels in both hardstyle competitions and GS competitions, and trained champions and competitors of the highest level in both disciplines. And so what I'm bringing to play here is hardstyle black belt, you know, GS black belt, and then something else in between, because I would liken hardstyle to like Shotokan karate, right? It's not the first time it's been likened to that. I believe Pavel even likened it to that himself. And like, it's the sort of it's a full contact striking martial art. And I mean proper pressure tested Shotokan karate. So if you're like a hardstyle expert, I would consider you like the kettlebell equivalent of a pressure tested, properly proficient in real combat Shotokan karate black belt. But if you're a GS champion of a high level, I would consider you a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt champion, right? And both those guys are lethal, but if they meet in the middle, the BJJ guy, in most cases, he's not guaranteed to win, but in most cases, he probably will win. But neither are complete. Neither are complete. And they both kind of need each other to be complete. And even then, there's stuff missing, because karate and jiu-jitsu aren't everything. So the analogy, what I'm giving you is, what I'm bringing to play this weekend is the world champion mixed martial artist of kettlebell pressing, where you're bringing karate, you're bringing BJJ, you're bringing Muay Thai, you're bringing boxing, you're bringing sambo, you're bringing judo, you're bringing freestyle, you're bringing Greco, you can bring your granny if you want, right? It's all coming together to be the most holistic form of what I call the optimal press. And that's what we're going to be learning. Even if what you're doing this exercise for or learning this exercise for is to perform higher on a GS press or a typical hardstyle military press, it's still the right answer to learn this, because the rising tide raises all ships, remember? And the only question after we all agree that that's the answer is which tide rises the fastest? Which tide rises the longest and to the highest magnitude? And once you have the answers to those questions, that's the one you focus on. It'll actually make you better at the other styles of pressing faster and to a higher magnitude than practicing those styles by themselves independently. You know, so that's what we're in for.
Looking forward to it, Pete.
Yeah, no, honestly, there's loads in there. So we were talking at the beginning about like being a certain age and what have you, because we're all in our 40s, right? And when you said about that, it reminded I've never seen Benjamin Button, but obviously it's him and Kate Winslet, not Kate Winslet, what's she called? Kate Blanchett. And they meet in the middle somewhere at the right age, right? And that's when it happens. So that's what you just kind of said, I think, is like, you know, you were light, but you couldn't lift the weight. Now you can lift the weight, but you're heavier. So it's got to come to somewhere, but that doesn't happen overnight, right? It's taken 30 years to get to that point, and then you're kind of ready. But if it goes beyond this, you get into your 50s then, and then all of a sudden it might be slipping away again, right? So that was the first thing I thought of. So like, and I know from like old time strongmen and all that sort of stuff, they were all in their 40s when they were like performing, weren't they? Because they just basically had their whole lives to get strong, and they did.
Yeah.
Which is one thing to say to someone in their 40s is like, it takes time. And if you know, I started in my late 30s, so I would go on about I'm the strongest I've ever been now, but I haven't got a benchmark from my 20s. So actually that's easier, I suppose, because I can be stronger because I was never strong. So that's the number one. So anyone in the 30s, 40s, 50s or whatever can be the strongest they've ever been if they've never done anything, or if they're chasing what they used to have, they can start to move back towards it. Maybe it's not get there, but at least they can do it slowly. But also, we were talking before we recorded about Sean Conway, who we had on last week, doing his 105. Because when James mentioned it to you, he's 105 Ironman triathlons in 105 days. And you were like, all right, okay. And then you went, hang on. That's like, that is outrageous. And he did that last year, and he's 42, 43, I think.
Yeah, I think he's 43 or 44 this year, isn't he?
Yeah, he did it. Yeah. So he did that in December or November or whenever it was. Well, over a period of 3 and a bit months, but he did it towards the end of last year, I think. So that's one of those things that you said about, you know, having luck and confidence and believe you can do stuff and all of that. So obviously there's the technique and everything, and then the training and the programming and all that. But there's more to it than that, isn't there? Because you've got to actually have that belief. Like you said, when you were a kid, you couldn't carry those bells. You didn't have the belief to do that, so you took your brother with you. If your brother didn't go with you, you would have had to get them home somehow.
Somehow, yeah.
Yeah. So
they'll probably still be at the bus stop.
They'd be in Belfast with like a little plaque next to them. Strength. Yeah. Strength. Paul Mcllroy tried to carry these home once.
A heroic effort that didn't quite work out. Yeah.
But no, like, I mean, can you speak to that a little bit about, because we were I think you said when James asked you to come on, you were like, I've got a lot to say about that, actually, about the, you know, being in your 40s, say, and training and not getting injured, basically, as well, because people worry about that. People worry about having to step back. People worry about lifting heavier weights, all these sorts of things, which if you do it in the right way, you can do it forever, right?
Yes. Well, there's so much to, well, to quote a modern fashionable expression, unpack in that everybody's saying it. There's so much to unpack. Unpack's like a real thing to say these days.
Let's unpack that one, shall we?
You know, there's a few bags I need to unpack from the last holiday. No, no, yes. So there's so much in there. There's so much in there to talk about and to talk to. The first thing to realize about age, I think, is that it's not the number one most important factor to consider when you're training someone. The first and foremost thing to consider is who they are, what their training age is. There's different ages. There's training age, there's chronological age, and there's biological age. Okay. And there's a link between at least the last two. There's usually quite a strong link, or quite a strong correlation, I should say, but they're not necessarily all correlated, and they're usually all three different numbers. Like, for example, I would stagger a guess that the three of us are biologically younger than what we are chronologically. Like, I don't think you at all look your age, you two guys. Like, you really, really don't. Like, Pete's a vampire. Like really, really and truly, you're not a kick in the ass off 50. You're turning 48 this year, aren't you?
48 in November, yeah.
Yeah. So that's insane. You don't look that at
Especially
all.
considering how much I used to drink when I was younger.
I know. Well, there's definitely a genetic factor without doubt, but there's also a lifestyle factor that you're like, I think you look younger now than what you do from some of the pictures that you share when you're in your 30s.
Definitely.
Do you know?
That was stress. That was stress from having a stressful job and drinking through it, basically. It's amazing how old that, and it can be reversed, obviously.
It can be reversed and it can be exceeded in the right direction by a hell of a margin. And these are both very good examples of that. So you need to take it on an individual by individual basis, and also realize that some people, when it comes to getting older, don't age at the same rate. Like there are individuals who still have the same testosterone levels that they had when they were in their 20s, when they're in their 80s. Now, that's rare, but it has been observed. And maybe there are lifestyle factors involved in that, but there's definitely genetic factors. So that's the first thing to realize. The second thing to realize is that, as you say, it takes time to get better, right? And the human body, I think that a lot of the research around the hormonal and muscular and general physical and cognitive decline of the human body looks at, and probably should look at, the average population, i.e. someone who is of average, and so far as a human being can be average, in as many different variables as possible: lifestyle, sleep patterns, diet, activity levels, level of sedentary behavior. And when you do that, the human body has a decline rate that's different, and that happens at a different point than if you're looking at an individual who has been trying to do the opposite of that their whole life, trying to progress forward, right? You're essentially raising that ceiling. You're raising your comfort zone, for want of a better terminology. You're raising the point at which it starts to get difficult to get better, or to not get worse, right? Well, that's another interesting point. I'm skipping from thing to thing here, but there's your years for improving, and then there's your years for maintaining as well. And both of those can and should happen at a much higher point than most typical research or mainstream knowledge is making apparent. But if you can extend that progress period for as long as possible, and then extend the maintenance period for as long as possible, you're really not left with very many years left alive where things start to decline, right? And then your job becomes to continue to do what you're doing to make that decline as slow as humanly possible, so that you die young, as old as possible.
I think when we had Fabio on, Fabio.
Sorry, I was muted there. I've literally just looked that YouTube video up and written it down. I watched it the other day. Die young as late as possible. That was your
the A12 coach radar. Yeah.
I was just going to say, because similar, Paul, to what you're saying, we've had Fabio Zonin on a few times from Strong First. He's 54 now, and last time we had him on, he was talking about he had peaked, or he was training, run a program up towards Christmas, and he was aiming to replicate his one RMs from 10 years ago, at 54 from 44,
Yeah.
and at the same body weight as well. And he'd kind of got himself to, and he's very, very like analytical. He's got everything recorded, notes. He's, very precise with things. And I think was it about 85 kilos or something he got to,
Yeah.
Pete, rings a bell, 85 kilos, and he can deadlift like 280 or something still, at 85 kilos, and so for him, like he said, he's not trying to get stronger now. He may do in some things at some times, but he's trying to, just keep training. And if he can continually do what he could do 10 years ago, then that's kind of good enough, And I suppose that's kind of similar to what you're saying, isn't it? Is get to that peak and then maintain it for as long as possible and avoid the decline for the next, maybe in your 60s. I don't know.
Yeah, and then there's your training age. Fabio's chronological age, I don't think is too old to get stronger. With his training age and his chronological age, it is tougher because he's been training all his life, and Fabio's been training.
He said 40 years, I think, like seriously.
40 years,
yeah.
So I started in the early 90s. He probably started in the early 80s. He's almost exactly 10 years older than me, I think. And that would make sense. And he's been jacked since the 80s, right? So you know what I mean? Let's just call it, since He-Man was on TV, he was He-Man. So it is challenging to continue to get stronger even today in 2024. But it's probably more to do with that than it is to do with him being in his mid-50s. Although being in your mid-50s doesn't, it's not the ideal age to make optimal progress at. However, I have numerous anecdotal stories that I could share on the subject about remarkable individuals who I worked with. Like, my first ever time, I'll just share this quickly. It's worth hearing. I think it's fun. So it's a fun story. And it might even bring a tear to your eye. Who knows? My first time ever going into a proper powerlifting gym was in the late 90s. I was 19 at the time, and myself and my friend, who was 21 at the time, thought we were shit hot when it came to, that's why we were there, right? We weren't there to check out the niceties. We were there because we wanted to show everybody that we were the next thing, because we'd found out that we were the strongest people at this point in our leisure center gym, and then our local hardcore gym, and then that we were lifting the same weight as some of the bigger, stronger people who were maybe even chemically enhanced, and we weren't. And then it was like, right, okay, there's this sport called powerlifting. We knew what strongman was from watching The World's Strongest Man in the 80s, but powerlifting was a thing that I'd only recently learned about, maybe a few years earlier. I was like, right, okay, let's look at the local records. Right, we can break those records. We lift more than those every day in the gym. I'm going to this powerlifting gym, and boy, are they going to be so happy to see us. Boy, are they going to be so impressed by us.
Did it have like a saloon door as you walked in?
Yes. I was wondering where the fanfare was when the door opened, that they hadn't already heard of us, and that we had saw fit to grace them with our presence. But funnily enough, it was just a bunch of really big, sort of angry-looking men in their 30s and 40s, and some older than that, who were irreverently unimpressed by everything that we were essentially coming in. And we told everyone, naturally, who would listen, and even those who were trying not to, that we could break the local Northern Ireland records and even the Irish records, and let's show us the chance. Let's give us the chance to do this. And of course, it was the bench press. It wasn't the squat or the deadlift. It was the bench press that these two 19-year-old hotshots were so good at, right? And that was the first thing. This old man, and I mean a proper old man in his 70s, walked up to me, looked me up and down, and looked at my legs in particular, and was like, have you ever seen a squat rack? And I was like, yeah, I've seen one or two floating around. And I told him about what we could do and how we could do it and this and that. And he says, right, give them a shot like that. And this guy in his 40s set us up with a bench press and blah blah blah. And we were cracking on. And I could see right away that the lifters who were watching it were terribly unimpressed. And I was even more confused because the weights we were lifting were actually decent, particularly pound for pound. But obviously our form was shit. It wasn't great, right? It was full range of motion, but our hips were coming off the bench. That was the main thing. It's the main. This is way pre-internet, right? Certainly pre-YouTube, like by a long shot, right? And so the only frame of reference we have is what we've seen in magazines or the local gym. And obviously there was nobody trying to curtail us or critique us or shame us into better technique. So in our constant quest to lift heavier and heavier weights, our form became more and more liberal as time went on. And the pause disappeared and the hips came off the bench and we were driving it up. And it was an impressive weight that was going up, but it was nothing close to competition strict form. And when we did max out, yes, over those records, over the amounts of those records, and went, see, he was like, listen, that's very strong, the old man, right? But there wasn't a single bench press done here tonight. I hope you know that. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, that there's this rule, there's that rule, there's the 2-second pause rule. Your butt's not allowed to come off the bench and blah, blah, blah. He took us right back down. And I actually still equaled the Northern Ireland record under competition strict form, but I had been like 30 kilos above it. So it was very humbling. And he's like, listen, you've got a lot of potential, but see for now. And he just handed us this red bar. It's just an empty red bar. He says, go into the corner. You've got this many squats to do, this many Romanian deadlifts. You've got this many good mornings to do. You've got this many lunges to do. And I was like, I didn't even know what a good morning was. I was like, I felt like just calling it good night and going home. And we were in the corner cursing this old man and going, what's he know? Like he has us doing this. Everybody's over in the corner. This bar was like 10 kilos, right? But in the meantime, there was a competition happening at the top of the gym. And it seemed to involve the old man and this guy in his 40s, right? Called Joe. That was his actual name, but Eddie was the name of the old man, right? And Eddie Finnegan was his name, right? He's no longer with us, but he was doing the good morning. There was gym records on the wall. I was like, what's going on here? And one of the lifters was like, Eddie used to hold every record in this gym. This is the last record that he's still got. And Joe's going to try and break it tonight, and Eddie's going to try and match him. He's going to try and keep his record, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? I hadn't a clue what was going on. And he's like, it's a good morning. I'm like, what do you mean? And it's like, okay. And so Joe was doing the good morning with what we would call correct technique, where it's a lot of hinging and not a lot of bending forward at the waist. Hinge back at the hips, load the hamstrings, load the glutes, get the parallel and straight back up by driving the hips forward and clenching the glutes and pushing the back into the bar and what have you. Eddie was bending forward at the waist alone, going below parallel by about 6 inches to the point where he must have been doing some sort of asymmetric behind the neck pull down to keep the bar from taking his head off because of gravity, right? And coming back up, right? And they both worked up to the record, which was 160 kilos. 352 pounds on the bar. And this old man did a triple with his old record that he used to do one with, right? And Joe skipped that weight and went to 190 and did it the other way and got it to parallel and lifted it, right? They were, by the way, sorry, I should say, in the build up to this, they were ripping each other apart verbally. Oh, look at you, fat boy. Oh, look at you, old man. Look at you, this and that. Watch your hip doesn't break. Oh, well, I don't. When's the last time you seen your hip past your belly? You know, we're just tearing each other apart. Oh, yeah, baldy. Oh, yeah, spacky. Oh, like just tearing each other apart verbally. You're never going to lift this. You know, like it was a war between these two men. One man in his 40s, one man in his 70s, right? And I sat back initially and was like actually going to actually step up and say to the guy when I was only 19, like, show some respect. He's old enough to be your father. Then at the end, when he had beaten him, and Eddie walked up and shook his hand, right, and said, I'm going to get you next time, into his ear, and like hit him a slap like that. And Joe just like hugged him and hit him a slap and walk on. Then I realized that he wasn't being disrespectful. He was actually being the most respectful that he could be by tearing him apart, because he wasn't treating him like an old man. He was just treating him like a man. Do you know? And because he deserved it. He deserved it, right? And at that point, I looked at Peter, who was my training partner at the time, and he looked at me, and I was just like, we better just do what the old man says, I think. And that was it. That was it. I never questioned another thing that he told us to do ever after that point. And he was my first coach, Eddie Finnegan, in powerlifting. And what a legend of a man. What a legend of a human being, you know. So don't underestimate what can be done. He was the first. I mean, imagine having that as an early experience, right? There's no doubt in my mind that that is one of the biggest reasons still to this day that I fully realize that at the age of 44, I'm stronger than I'm gonna break a personal record or two this year. And my personal records date back to the 90s, right? I have been breaking personal records since the 90s. I've been training with weights since the 90s, right? So I've been getting stronger since my teens every year, and I'm in my mid-40s. And I know I'm going to be stronger when I'm 45 than I was when I was 44, right? I'm 4 years down the line from the 40 with 40 at 40, the 40 strict presses with the 40 kilo kettlebell at 40 years old. And I have broken records of different kinds that I couldn't do at that time in 2020. You know, and if I wanted to, I know I could get up to doing 44 with 44 at 44. I know I could, right? It's kind of halfway in the back of my head, should I? Right? So one of the reasons why I know that's possible is because of Eddie. Because he was 70 years old bang on that day. 70 years old bang on. And I've seen him do something when he was 75 as well. I've had stories for Eddie that last for days. There was a guy in his 30s when he was 75 who was complaining about having to do 10 rep sets on the conventional deadlift. He's like, Eddie, nobody does 10 rep sets. I just knew what the reaction was going to be at that point because I'd known Eddie for 5 years at that point. I was like, nobody does 10 rep sets on the deadlift. You're so old fashioned. This is, you know, who does that? You can't maintain your this and your that. And started quoting him all these anatomical terminologies and physiological reasons as to why your form would have to degrade after 5 reps and why it would have to become unsafe and increasingly this and that. And there was 150 kilos on the bar that he was asking this guy who was more than capable of doing like 5 sets of 10 with this. Without saying a single word at 75 years of age, he got up, walked over to the 150, did 10 reps with the straightest back and the most picture-perfect form I have ever seen on the deadlift, put the bar back down like he was in a church, like no bouncing, no nothing, no banging, no nothing, slow negatives, put it back down, let go of the bar, went like that, and stood up and walked back over to the bench that he was sitting on. The guy whose name was Paul, it's not me, just started walking towards the bar and just did the deadlifts. Didn't say a single thing, just went and done the deadlifts. right? So, you know, I actually agree with them. 10 rep sets on the deadlifts is every rep after one does get increasingly more dangerous on the deadlift, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It doesn't mean that you can't condition yourself to it. It doesn't mean that if you expand the comfort zone correctly, 10 reps isn't going to represent a low enough effort at a certain weight that you can't maintain perfect form at it. Of course you can. Of course you can. So it takes time to get strong. And if you program correctly and you program optimally, and we can talk about comfort zone expansion and training as we get older as well.
So I was going to ask Paul, with regards to day 2 that you're going to be doing, and it's pillars of power.
So that's day 1 sorted. Now we're on to right.
Yeah.
Hello, it's Peter here. In true fashion, Mr. Paul Mcllroy talked for over 2 hours. So we have split this episode into 2 so you can digest this week, and then you can come back next week for episode 186 with Mr. Paul Mcllroy. We shall see you next week.